It begins with a knock, not a thunderclap, not a scream, but something far quieter, stranger, more unsettling. One morning, without having done anything wrong, Josef K is arrested. No explanation, no charge, no warning. Just two unfamiliar men, dressed in ordinary clothes, standing in his rented room on what should have been an ordinary morning. This is how Franz Kafka's The Trial opens, abruptly, eerily, with a sentence that drops us into a world where logic falters and meaning slips like water through your fingers. From this moment forward, Josef K, a respectable, sharp-dressed bank officer, finds himself trapped in an invisible web. A man pursued by a system that refuses to name its reasons, yet demands absolute obedience. Chapter 1. Arrest. Conversation with Mrs. Grubach, then Miss Berstner. It's Josef K's 30th birthday, but instead of a celebration, he wakes to find two strangers, Franz and Willem, looming in his room. They are warders. They inform him that he is under arrest, though they cannot, or will not, say what for. There's no explanation, no charge, no warning. Just two unfamiliar men, dressed in ordinary clothes, standing in his rented room on what should have been an ordinary morning. K is baffled, but not detained. He's allowed to get dressed, to move around, to go to work. But the word arrest now hangs over him like a shadow he can't shake. He's no longer free, though no walls surround him. He's been pulled into something far more insidious, a system that operates without transparency, without reason, without humanity. He tries to make sense of it. First, he speaks to his landlady, Mrs. Grubach, a quiet, matronly woman who shows him a kind of polite sympathy, though her reassurances are hollow. She suggests that maybe there's been a mistake, maybe things will be cleared up soon. But there's a tremble of fear behind her words, as though she too senses the absurdity creeping in. Later that evening, K seeks out Miss Berstner, a young typist who rents a room in the same boarding house. He confides in her, awkwardly, nervously, describing the surreal encounter. But the conversation quickly becomes strained, uncomfortable. There's a strange tension between them, an uneasy intimacy laced with guilt, intrusion, and something unspoken. This interaction, so ordinary yet so unsteady, sets the tone for what to come. In Kafka's world, personal space and public judgment bleed into one another. Even in K's private attempts to make sense of his situation, the weight of the system presses down. Every conversation becomes a courtroom. Every relationship becomes a risk. Chapter 2. First interrogation. Not long after, a summons arrives. Vague but firm. K is instructed to appear at an address in a poor, crumbling tenement building. When he arrives, he finds not a court in any formal sense, but a chaotic, makeshift hearing held in a stuffy, overcrowded attic room. The scene is surreal, more circus than tribunal. The judge, if he can be called that, is buried in paperwork. The audience, oddly invested, murmurs and laughs. There is no order, no clarity. Yet K tries, earnestly, to speak. He presents his defense, hoping that logic, clarity, or dignity might count for something. But his words fall into a void. His reasoned arguments are misheard, distorted, twisted into something else entirely. The more passionately he tries to defend himself, the more the crowd sees him as a spectacle, less a man making a case, more a performer, putting on a show. And that's when it begins to dawn on him. This process he's been dragged into isn't interested in truth. It's not built to deliver justice. It's a machine, opaque, bloated, and impenetrable, that exists only to perpetuate itself. No verdict is given. No progress is made. K leaves as uncertain as he arrived. Except now, the weight is heavier. The system has shown its face, not as a courtroom, but as a labyrinth with no exit, no map, and no reason. And this is only the beginning. Chapter 3. In the empty courtroom, the student, the offices. Josef K returns to the place where it all began, the courtroom tucked away inside a decrepit tenement building. But this time, it's different. The chaos of his first hearing is gone. The room is eerily silent, abandoned. Benches sit empty. No judge, no audience, no gavel. Just dust, stale air, and the weight of something unspoken. He didn't come with a summons this time. Only a hope, maybe a desperate one, that he could find clarity, or at least a thread to follow. But clarity eludes him. The silence isn't peaceful. It's suffocating. And the courtroom, once filled with noise and absurdity, now feels like a hollow shell, echoing with uncertainty. Wandering through the narrow, winding corridors beyond the courtroom, Kay stumbles upon a strange, unsettling scene. A young law student, nervous, intense, appears suddenly and begins to drag a washerwoman away, manhandling her through the halls. She protests faintly, but her voice is drowned out by the student's authority. Watching this unfold is a court usher, an official of sorts, but he does nothing. His eyes are tired, his shoulders slumped, as though he's already surrendered to the powerlessness of his role. Kay is disturbed, but he doesn't intervene. The whole scene plays out like a dream, or a warning, a symbol of how power, in this strange world, is twisted and misused under the guise of procedure. Kay continues deeper into the building, and what he finds next is even more unsettling. Office after office after office, hidden away in the very walls of this residential block. Cramped rooms packed with papers, desks, piles of meaningless documentation. Court clerks and bureaucrats lie slumped over their work, barely conscious. Some are asleep. Others look feverish, their skin sallow and damp, as if the air itself is poisoned. The deeper Kay goes, the more distorted everything feels. There's no clear hierarchy, no obvious order, just layers of bureaucracy stacked upon one another like rotting wood. The system isn't just broken, it's decaying. And yet, it continues, endlessly. As Kay leaves, he feels it pressing on him, not just the heat and the closeness of the air, but the realization that this entire process he's trapped in isn't just unjust, it's surreal, impenetrable, and possibly inescapable. Chapter 4. Friends of the Examining Magistrate. As time goes on, Kay begins to notice things, glimpses of the court's influence seeping into the cracks of everyday life. People around him behave strangely. Some know more than they should. Others pretend to know nothing at all. He's starting to suspect that the reach of the court is far wider than he once believed. It's during this chapter that Kay meets the wife of a court official. She's mysterious, nervous, speaking in hushed tones, casting glances over her shoulder as if the walls themselves are listening. She warns Kay about the friends of the examining magistrate, a group of sycophants and manipulators who orbit the court like scavengers, using their proximity to power for personal gain. These aren't just bureaucrats, they're predators, feeding on fear, secrets, and silence. Their influence is invisible, but devastating. Kay begins to understand that this isn't a system governed by laws or logic. It's governed by connections, intimidation, and submission. Everyone plays their part, willingly or not. The court is less a legal institution and more a living organism, parasitic, ever-growing, feeding on those it traps. The more Kay tries to reach the center, to get closer to the truth, the more the center recedes, like a mirage. He thought the court was a place. Now it seems like it's everywhere, in everyone.
Chapter 5. The Whipper.
Then comes one of the novel's most disturbing episodes, a scene so bizarre, so cruel, it borders on the nightmarish. One day, as K walks through the bank where he works, he hears a noise, a low, rhythmic sound, something like a slap or a cry. Curious and uneasy, he follows the sound to a broom closet tucked in the back of the building, and what he finds there stops him cold. Inside, bent over and whimpering, are the two warders who originally arrested him, Franz and Willem. And behind them, a third man, a whipper. Methodical, silent, merciless. He's striking them with a leather lash, punishing them for what was deemed misconduct during K's arrest. Franz and Willem plead with K, their eyes wide with terror. They beg him to intervene, to stop the punishment. But K, shaken, speechless, backs away. He closes the door, leaves the closet, tries to forget what he saw. But days later, when he walks by that same hallway again, the sound returns. The same cries, the same lash, the same scene. He opens the door, and it's all happening again, exactly the same, as if it had never stopped, as if it were stuck on a loop, an eternal, senseless punishment playing out endlessly in the shadows. Kafka doesn't explain this moment. He doesn't need to. The image speaks for itself. A system that punishes without mercy, without end, and without reason. A machine that feeds on pain and repeats itself over and over again. In this world, suffering isn't a consequence, it's a ritual. A grotesque symbol of a justice system that has abandoned justice altogether. And Josef K, who only wanted answers, now finds himself staring into the heart of something much darker, something that defies understanding altogether. Chapter 6. The Uncle, Lenny. The walls are closing in on Josef K, and just when the pressure feels unbearable, a new character arrives. A face from his past. His Uncle Carl, sharp-tongued and imposing, storms into K's life with all the urgency of someone trying to extinguish a fire. He's appalled by K's passivity, by his lack of strategy, by the shame he believes his nephew is bringing upon the family. Carl doesn't waste time. He insists K needs proper representation and takes him to meet an advocate, an old, ailing lawyer named Halt. The man is bedridden, pale, and physically fragile, yet somehow surrounded by an aura of influence. He whispers more than he speaks, but his words carry weight. Inside Halt's dimly lit home, the air feels thick, not just with the smell of medicine and dust, but with secrets. Bureaucratic files are stacked high, strange visitors come and go, and then there's Lenny, the lawyer's young nurse. She glides through the house like she belongs to no one and to everyone. She takes an immediate interest in K. Her gaze lingers. Her manner is intimate, even possessive. Before long, she seduces him. Their encounter isn't tender. It's disorienting, surreal, as if K has been swept into another game he doesn't understand. He doesn't even know if he wanted it. Uncle Carl, sensing the distraction, is furious once more. He came to help and instead sees his nephew slipping deeper into a fog of confusion and misplaced trust. K, meanwhile, begins to question everything, especially Halt. The lawyer claims to be working behind the scenes, pulling strings, but results are non-existent. Answers are vague. The only thing K is certain of is that he's losing control. Chapter 8. Block the Merchant. Dismissal of the lawyer. Doubt grows like a shadow in K's mind. The more time he spends with Halt, the more he realizes that the lawyer may not be helping at all. Maybe he's just another cog in the same indifferent machine. In search of alternatives, K turns to a client from the bank, a manufacturer. This man, worldly and well-connected, listens patiently and offers something unexpected, a new path. He introduces K to a painter named Tittarelli, a man with strange ties to the court. Tittarelli lives in a cramped attic, his walls cluttered with eerie, identical portraits of judges.
He paints them endlessly, as if caught in a loop. Despite his lowly profession, Tittarelli claims to wield influence, though only of a certain kind. He outlines 3 possible outcomes of a trial. Definite acquittal, which is practically mythical, no one's ever seen it. Apparent acquittal, where charges vanish for a while but can return without warning, or protraction, a never-ending deferral that keeps the case alive but dormant. K listens, horrified. Every path leads to the same prison. There is no door marked freedom, only variations of confinement. Tittarelli's offers are like mirages, choices that only appear to be choices. No matter which he picks, he will remain entangled, watched, judged. K walks away from the attic dizzy with disillusionment. The court isn't a place you reach, it's a place you drown in. Chapter 8. Block the Merchant, Dismissal of the Lawyer. K returns to Hald once more, but this time not as a client seeking help, but as a man peering into a mirror of his own possible fate. There he meets Block, a frail, hollow-eyed merchant who's been on trial for years. He's dedicated his entire existence to appeasing the court and to groveling before the lawyer. He barely speaks without permission. He carries papers, files, tokens of obedience like a servant clinging to the hope of survival. His mind is no longer his own. His dignity is long gone. He's become an echo of the system, a man swallowed whole by fear and dependence. K watches him with a mix of pity and revulsion. Is this what he's becoming? A man defined not by who he is, but by how well he plays the game? That night, something snaps. K dismisses Halt. He tears himself from the lawyer's grasp. But the decision doesn't feel empowering. It feels empty, like trying to walk away from a nightmare only to find it following close behind. Even his defiance is absorbed by the system, swallowed like everything else. There is no resistance when the world refuses to acknowledge a rebellion. And so again, Josef K is left alone, unchained, but still trapped.
Chapter 9. In the Cathedral. The air is heavy with stormlight as Josef K walks toward a cathedral, an ancient, echoing structure that feels more like a tomb than a place of faith. He's been told to meet an important client there, a last-minute assignment from the bank. But when he enters, the pews are empty. The grand arches above him stretch into darkness, and in the shadows, someone is waiting. A priest steps forward, tall, solemn, and dressed in black. But this is no ordinary clergyman. He introduces himself as a chaplain of the court. There will be no client today. There is only a story. Without warning, the priest launches into a parable, a strange symbolic tale called Before the Law. A man comes from the countryside, seeking access to the law. A gatekeeper stands before the door and denies him entry. Not forever, just not yet. The man waits for years. He tries to bribe the gatekeeper, pleads, begs, ages. Still, the door remains closed. As the man lies dying, he asks why no one else ever tried to enter. The gatekeeper replies, "This door was meant only for you, and now I'm going to close it." The words hang in the cathedral like incense, dense, cryptic, and unshakable. K listens, disturbed. He asks the obvious question. Was the man deceived? Was the gatekeeper keeping him from something that was already his? But the priest doesn't offer clarity. He says both answers could be true, or neither. The point, he implies, is not the answer, but the impossibility of ever truly understanding the rules. This moment, quiet, still, echoing with ancient confusion, is the heart of Kafka's novel. The law is not just a courtroom or a set of statutes. It is the looming presence that shapes our lives. Unknowable, unreachable, and yet always watching. And K? He walks away from the cathedral not enlightened, but hollowed. The story has not freed him. It has only made the walls around him more invisible, more inescapable. Chapter 10. End. The year turns. On the night before his 31st birthday, Josef K is sitting in his apartment when 2 men in black coats arrive. They don't need to explain who they are.
He already knows. They don't speak, they don't threaten, they simply take him. Through the winding streets of the city, they lead him, past homes and lights and windows filled with life he'll never touch again, until they reach the outskirts, an abandoned quarry, quiet and cold beneath the moonlight. There, without ceremony, they prepare to execute him. K doesn't fight. He doesn't scream. He doesn't run. As one man holds him down and the other raises the knife, K looks up at the sky. His final thought is not one of fear, but of shame. A deep, soul-staining shame. Not because he knows what he's guilty of, but because he never knew. Because he was never told. Then, the blade descends. And the story ends. No reason is given, no verdict is read, the court never appears again. Just silence. And an extinguished life. Closing reflection. The trial is not a story about crime and punishment. It is a story about being human in a world that refuses to explain itself. Kafka paints a world where bureaucracy becomes religion, where systems rule without logic, and where the individual is crushed not by violence, but by confusion, helplessness, and unanswerable questions. Josef K is not just a character, he is a symbol of anyone who has ever felt lost in a system too big to comprehend, of anyone who has asked why and been met with silence, of anyone who has felt guilt without knowing why or shame without a verdict. The trial leaves us not with resolution, but with reflection. It forces us to ask, what doors are we waiting outside of? What truths do we assume are just beyond reach? And how long will we wait before realizing the door was always meant for us, but we never walked through?